So, what happens when a single social media post from the president's account ignites a massive political firestorm? We're talking widespread condemnation, accusations of racism, and some serious questions being raised. And then, after initially defending it, the White House deleted the post and blamed a staffer. Let's break down what actually happened.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the video itself. What was in it that caused such an uproar? Then we'll cover the swift and pretty widespread reaction. After that, we'll dive into how the White House's official story changed. We'll also look at the long history of conflict that gives all this crucial context. And finally, we'll talk about the impact of this whole controversy. All right, let's get right to the source of this whole firestorm and take a look at the post itself. Now, when the backlash first started to bubble up, the White House's official line was basically to dismiss it all as, quote, fake outrage over what they just called an internet meme video. But here's the twist. Just hours after that defensive statement, the post was gone, deleted. And that sudden reversal, going from defending it to scrubbing it, it really raises the central question: what exactly was in that video? Okay, so this 62-second video, it had a few different things going on. The part that really drew the fire was a very brief, just 2-second AI-generated clip. It showed the Obama's faces on dancing monkeys with The Lion Sleeps Tonight playing in the background. Now, that little clip was part of a longer video that also pushed false claims about the 2020 election and showed President Trump as a lion and other Democrats as hyenas. As you can probably imagine, the reaction to the video's content was immediate, and it came from all over the political map. And when I say widespread, I mean it. The condemnation wasn't just coming from one side of the aisle. We're talking Democratic leaders, but also some Republican senators, civil rights figures, former officials, and just a ton of people on social media. On the Democratic side, the response was, it was sharp and fast. California Governor Gavin Newsom's office, for instance, called it disgusting behavior, and didn't just stop there. They called on every single Republican to denounce it, basically framing it as a moment that required a unified moral stand. But what's really telling is that the backlash also came from inside the Republican Party. Senator Tim Scott, who's a key ally of the president, called the post the most racist thing he'd seen from the administration and said he was praying it was fake. His statement really showed that the criticism wasn't just a partisan attack. So, facing all this growing bipartisan criticism, the White House's public stance on the video started to shift. You can really see the change over just a few hours. At first, they're telling reporters to stop the fake outrage. Then, a little later, the post is deleted. And then, the White House put out a new statement claiming a staffer had posted the video erroneously, which effectively distanced the president from the content.
Now, to really understand why this one post caused such a powerful reaction, we have to zoom out a bit. This is really just the latest chapter in a long and very public conflict between these two figures. This timeline really lays out more than a decade of conflict. It pretty much started back in 2011 with Trump championing the birther conspiracy. President Obama later publicly ridiculed him for that. Then, during his own presidency, Trump made undoing Obama's policies a central goal. And more recently, he's repeatedly used AI-generated content to attack Obama, including another video that showed him being arrested. And that birther movement is a really key piece of the puzzle. It was so significant because it went way beyond just policy disagreements. By pushing the false claim that Obama wasn't a U.S. citizen, it was questioning the fundamental legitimacy of the nation's first Black president. And for Trump, it became a central part of his political rise. This is where the historical context becomes absolutely critical. The depiction of Black people as apes isn't just a random insult. It's a centuries-old, dangerous racist trope that was used to dehumanize them and justify slavery. It's that history that explains why that 2-second clip was so widely seen as completely out of bounds for political discourse. Okay, so the post is down, we have the historical context. But what's been the actual, tangible impact of this whole event? Let's take a look at some of the polling data and the big questions that are still out there. Let's start with a number. -15%. According to recent polling from Navigator Research, which was conducted right after this controversy, President Trump's net approval rating now stands at -15, with 56% of voters disapproving of his performance. And that's not just a one-off finding from a single poll. The trend is consistent across the board. If you look at data from sources like YouGov, Marist, and Pew Research, they all show disapproval ratings at 54% or even higher in the period right after this incident. So let's kind of recap by separating what we know for sure from what's still up in the air. We know the sequence of events. The video was posted, it got condemned by both sides, it was deleted, and the White House blamed a staffer. We also have the polling data showing high public disapproval. What we don't know yet are the long-term consequences, or if this will have any lasting political impact.
And that really leaves us with a final, and honestly, a much bigger question that this whole incident just shoves right to the forefront. This post was made with AI tools that are pretty easy to get. As this technology gets more and more powerful and widespread, it forces a much larger debate. In this new age of AI, what are the boundaries for political speech? And who, if anyone, is going to enforce them?